Welcome, everyone. My name is Shabnam Faruqi, and I'm a member of New Economy Project's Board of Directors. It's great to meet you. Thank you for joining our fall briefing for supporters. We launched these briefings a year ago to keep you, our community of supporters, updated on our far-reaching work. And we hope the briefings also tell you about aspects of our organization that you might not already be familiar with. With that in mind, today we are spotlighting ways that New Economy Project uses bold, engaging messaging and storytelling to affect change. These briefings tend to go quickly. Here's what we aim to cover for the next half hour. We're going to start by sharing with you some framing about how we think about communications and storytelling. Then we will share recent examples of strong messaging we've used to move our campaigns. We will then talk about how these examples fit into our broader work to frame bold narratives about our current economy and the need for transformational change. And finally, we have built in time for Q&A. Please feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And of course, we are eager to talk about how you can join the action. These briefings are great because you not only get to hear excellent updates about our work, but you also get to meet members of New Economy's board and staff. Today, you'll be hearing from several staff members, our co-directors, Sarah Ludwig and Day Del Rio, Associate Director, Andy Morrison, and Senior Research and Communications Coordinator, Ben Hagan. Before I turn it over to the staff, I'd like to share just one reason I'm glad to serve on New Economy Project's board, and that's inspiration. I'm always newly inspired by New Economy Project's vision for change and its substantive accomplishments that demonstrate that a fair and responsible economy is possible. We are especially happy to be with all of you, our community of supporters. We know we can't do this work without you. You make our work possible. Thank you. Sarah, take it away.
Thanks, Shabnam, and hi, everyone. So we wanted to share with you tonight how we think about and use bold framing and stories and research and other communications to advance our campaigns and change the narrative around what's possible. So you're going to be seeing examples shortly of how we use different media, videos, maps, and graphics to move our work. But whatever the medium, here are 4 things we think about at New Economy Project as we carry out our messaging and communications. First, we know that building a powerful shared narrative is crucial to effective organizing and social change, both on one hand to counter the dominant narratives around our economy, especially when it comes to racial wealth inequality and inequitable neighborhood development in New York. And also a kind of flip side of that is to engage people in visualizing the new economy that so many of us are working to build. Second, you're going to hear us referring to our campaigns throughout the examples that we're sharing with you. And that's how we organize our strategic day-to-day work. As you're going to see from the examples, we make sure always in our communications to draw connections among the various aspects of our work, whether we're talking about public banking, community land trusts, financial justice, workplace democracy, you name it. We really take pains to make clear that it's all fundamentally about economic democracy and racial justice, neighborhood equity, and ecological sustainability. In other words, we frame all of our work as part of a unified vision. Yes, we've chosen to work on particular initiatives or campaigns, but that's because they all each speak to fundamental structural issues in New York. Third, our work frequently involves complicated topics that people might not otherwise be thinking about or engage with. So we think of it as our job to make these complex topics that are part of our everyday lives accessible to everybody, easy to understand, easy to talk about, easy to organize around. So we use our communications to engage people and community groups in the issues by making vivid and tangible what we're talking about, to help people see and feel the power of changing our systems, as you're going to see with our public banking, animated video, and other examples we're about to share. We really think it's vital through our communications to show and amplify actual concrete work going on in communities, to show that these are not just values and vision that we're working towards, although we do have strong values and a vision that we're working towards, but to be concrete and practical, to show that groups are really actually making this change happen, and that collectively we can and will win big change. As you're going to see with the video showcasing a community credit union in Brooklyn, for example. And last but not least is the fourth point, which is that in all of our messaging, in all of our communications, we're trying to reach multiple audiences with really fundamental questions about how our economy works and what it could and should look like. Ultimately, we're trying to redefine with others what's possible by engaging people in envisioning a just and equitable economy, a just city and society, and to really underscore concepts of community self-determination, whether we're talking about people's housing, workplaces, money, energy, food, you name it. So that's the sort of general frame for our communications and why it runs through every single aspect of what we do at the organization. And I'm very happy to pass it now to my esteemed co-director, Deyanira Del Rio. Day.
Thank you, Sarah, and good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We're excited to share with you tonight next some recent examples that convey what Sarah was describing about our dual vision and frame for the work and the different approaches that we take to communicate our campaigns and engage community groups and everyday New Yorkers in our work. We're going to start with a short animated video that we very recently produced. This is for our public bank campaign, and it's called "This is a Dollar." We made this video to illustrate what exactly happens to our public money in New York City when we pay taxes or when our city collects other revenue to pay for city services. So where does that money go when we pay taxes, for example, and how is it used? Secondly, the video encourages people to imagine what would and could happen if we brought those billions of dollars of New York City public funds that the city collects each year, our public money, into public control through a people's bank. So what could we invest in if we had such a people's bank here in New York City? What kind of city could we create together? So let's check out the video.
This is a dollar, the kind you and I contribute to our local and state government when we pay taxes. When we send these dollars to New York City, Rochester, or Albany, they turn into public funds that help pay for services that keep our cities running. But on their way to turning into schools and subway cars, these dollars travel through a shadowy corridor, a place where our interests are not served: Wall Street. The funds we send to the government need to be held somewhere. The problem is, Wall Street banks that hold public money operate with zero accountability to the very people who generated these funds, us. So what kinds of investments are Wall Street banks making? They're giving loans to predatory developers and landlords, while denying them to Black and brown homeowners and small businesses. They're pumping money into fossil fuels and lobbying against renewable energy. And they're funding prisons and immigrant detention centers, fueling and profiting from mass incarceration. Let's not forget these are the same banks that crashed our economy in 2008 and reaped record profits during the pandemic while extracting billions of dollars in fees from struggling New Yorkers. Isn't there somewhere else we could put our public money? I'm so glad you asked. With a public bank, we can ensure that all of our public dollars work for the public good. Instead of lining private pockets, our money would build collective community wealth. A public bank would fund community land trusts, permanently affordable housing, and worker-owned businesses. It would invest in clean energy and a just transition in frontline communities. And it would partner with community credit unions and others to expand fair banking services and create living wage jobs. Hundreds of public banks exist around the world, including here in the US with the century-old State Bank of North Dakota. It's time to bring public banking to New York. Let's put our dollars to work for our communities and build an economy that works for everyone. Join the movement. Check out these state and local coalitions to learn more and take action.
We hope you enjoyed that. It's available on our website and also on the site of our Public Bank Coalition, which is publicbanknyc.org. I want to say that we worked with a really incredible Chicago-based artist, Lizzie Bright, to produce that video. And we've been sharing it far and wide. It's gone semi-viral on Twitter, and we've been using it with community groups throughout the city and state, with coalition partners, policymakers, and many others to really raise awareness of and support for the public bank movement in New York City and state. And hopefully what's clear is that the public bank campaign it was really important for us to create a video like this that could speak to how a public bank would affect people, everyday people, and their communities here in New York. Public bank is a good example of a campaign that we're working towards that really is about envisioning a different economy, one that works for all New Yorkers equitably. We don't have a public bank to point towards here locally. There is the State Bank of North Dakota and other examples that you just heard about, but we really wanted to create this video to illustrate again what it is and bring it down to the neighborhood level, which is so important for our work. So I'm happy next to introduce our Associate Director, Andy Morrison, who's gonna take us into the next part of the agenda.
Thank you, Day, and hello everyone. I'm Andy Morrison, and I have the privilege of sharing with you another short video that we made featuring a community-owned financial institution in the heart of Brooklyn called the Brooklyn Co-op Federal Credit Union. We made this video as part of our work convening the New York State Community Equity Agenda, which is a coalition that brings groups together from all over the state to fight for economic democracy and racial justice. And winning support for community development financial institutions like Brooklyn Co-op is a key priority for members of this coalition. So let's watch the video.
We were explaining the ethos of what it means to be a part of this place and how we're building a kind of solidarity movement just by being members here and member owners here. And then
so the money that we put in here, whether it's savings or checking, we're able to loan it to businesses in our community that are of our community,
So it's a type of economic organization that doesn't allow for extraction of wealth.
Like, I want to invest in an economy that's going to invest back in me. It values me. It values my neighborhood, and it values connections between neighbors.
I became a member of the Brooklyn Co-op, and it's one of the better things I've done since I've been in New York.
And one thing to note about that video, going back to a point Sarah made at the top about how our communications strategies are part of a broader unified vision, is you'll note that that was about community development, credit unions, and when you watch the public bank video, a big part of that campaign is for a public bank to support community development credit unions. So they go hand in hand. Shifting gears, we also are eager to share with you an example of how we seize opportunities to do creative research that engages diverse audiences, community members, community groups, the media, and policymakers on the issues that we work on. So a great example of this is during the pandemic, we saw that big banks were extracting massive fees from their low-income customers, which is nothing new. But here we were in the throes of the pandemic, and so many people were struggling, and it was just really egregious. So we analyzed data from the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation for both New York City and New York State, and found that during just the first year of the pandemic, banks extracted $1.7 billion in fees from New Yorkers statewide. 1.3 billion of that was from New York City residents. and it was, primarily the biggest share of those fees were predatory overdraft fees, which really extract wealth from the lowest income New Yorkers, particularly folks in historically redlined and disinvested Black and brown neighborhoods. So we always aim to show how these things connect to people's everyday lives in ways that people can quickly grasp. And in this case, we actually were able to release this data all over the state simultaneously. And that was really effective in getting media attention. And you can see a couple of headlines on the screen. And then that media actually resulted in a letter from members of Congress to the banks, calling on them to cease the practice of predatory overdraft and other fees that were really exacerbating the economic toll of the pandemic in hard-hit communities. So that's a great example of how we do this. And now I'm happy to pass it to my colleague, Ben Hagan, our Senior Research and Communications Associate.
All right, thank you, Andy. That was great. And hello, everyone. My name is Ben Hagan, and I oversee our GIS mapping and applied research, as well as producing many of our graphics and our New Yorker Speak Out video series. The map I'm going to show you right now definitely underpins much of our work here at New Economy Project. So as you can see here, this is a map that depicts the concentration of bank branches in New York City neighborhoods. And this is a map that we've updated just about every year since the late 1990s. What you see when you look at the map is a glaring lack of bank branches throughout the city in neighborhoods that are predominantly Black and Latino, which are the areas that are shaded with the diagonal lines that you can see there. Where in spots on the map where there's no color, there's fewer than one bank branch for every 10,000 residents. So fewer than one for every 10,000 people. So what you're seeing, in other words, is entire neighborhoods of the city where hundreds of thousands of people have no access to mainstream banking services. But of course, we all have to deal with money, right? So what happens is check cashers, pawn shops, and in recent years, a whole new industry of high cost and often predatory online financial companies are finding ways to exploit these vacuums left by traditional banks. So we and lots of community groups throughout the city have used these maps over the years for a number of purposes. They've been used to engage their members and elected officials, to educate regulators and the media, to demonstrate the need for community-based and mission-driven financial institutions, to promote public banking, and to get banks to the table to negotiate for expanded lending, services, and investment. And we also map a ton of other economic and demographic information. This is just one example, but we have a lot of other maps on our website, including maps of where check cashers and pawn shops are concentrated in some of those red line neighborhoods that I mentioned a moment ago. And you can see many examples of these maps on our map gallery on our website, the link to which is being posted in the chat right now. We hope you'll check those out. Our maps make vivid and really irrefutable the fact that bank redlining is not a thing of the past, like so many people think, but it's very present. This is a picture of our city that has persisted for generations now and continues to cry out for serious action. So switching gears a little bit, we also wanted to share with you some of the memes we've created, where we get to have some fun with our communications, as well as call attention to economic injustices and some of the bold solutions that we're calling for. We're constantly creating interesting graphics to depict our messages for use in social media, at rallies, community events, and whole sorts of other things. And so this first image you'll see, we created this to coincide with Chase's annual shareholder meeting a few years ago, which we attended as shareholder activists. Our work is firmly rooted in New York City. And this meme, of course, plays off of the famous Daily News cover from the fiscal crisis in the 1970s, showing Gerald Ford essentially telling the city to drop dead. Here we have Chase CEO Jamie Dimon and some fast facts about the bank, which is where New York City keeps the largest amount of its public deposits, and also the biggest bank funder of fossil fuel extraction on the planet. And the next slide we're going to show you, this is the map that we use to show the dynamic growth of the Community Land Trust, or CLT movement in New York City. When we first began working with groups on CLTs, there was one active CLT in the city, just one. As you can see in this map, there's now some 19 and counting CLT movements in the city, working in neighborhoods across all 5 boroughs. So with that, I am going to pass the baton back to Sarah.
Thanks, Ben. And I want to share with you all a fun fact that will let you see that we've come a very long way in our mapping capabilities at New Economy Project. The very first bank branch map we made for New York City was made on a Xeroxed copy, a very grainy Xerox copy of a map of New York City that people filled in using felt tip pens the location of bank branches. We had one bank branch map, and then we had a side-by-side map, also a grainy city map, with the felt tip pen of circles showing where the check cashers and pawn shops were located. So we've come a long way since then, but that map was pretty strong too, and we used that very effectively. But you can see now we're GIS mavens extraordinaire. So as you've heard in all of our campaigns, we aim to be creative and powerful in how we communicate. We have always believed that part of our work is sharing brutal facts and offering concrete solutions that help change the narrative. These are just what you've seen tonight, a very, very few examples of the large volume of communications that we're generating. We produce tons of op-eds, blog pieces, fact sheets, alerts, and much, much, much more. And if you've attended previous briefings, then you've seen episodes from our powerful New Yorker Speak Out video series. And we really love these videos, which feature New Yorkers telling their stories, their personal stories, and amplifying in real terms what's happening to people in our city every single day. So we hope you'll check out the New Yorker Speak Out videos as well, which are really a very important part of our communications work. So I want to pass it back to Shabnam, who's going to moderate our Q&A and then close us out for the briefing. Shabnam?
Thank you. Before we get to the Q&A, and I see some questions coming in, we wanted to share just a few ways you can get involved in our work. You can tell your local legislators that you want to see public banking and community land trusts thrive in New York City. Check out the Take Action page on our website, the link to which we're now putting in the chat. And urge your local city council members to pass legislation advancing community land trust and establishing a people's bank for New York City. And an immediate way to support the organization is to please donate to New Economy Project. If you're already a New Economy Project donor, as we know many of you are, thank you. Please continue to donate generously, and please consider increasing your support. If you've never donated before, please donate and help us keep doing this important work. Your support is meaningful and deeply appreciated. Now let me look at the questions. All right, let me start with, can you give an example of a concrete win or success you had using communications?
Yeah, I'd be happy to start with that. One campaign that comes to mind is actually one from a few years back, where we were able to build out a coalition, a citywide coalition of labor and community groups that got New York City to pass the strongest ban anywhere in the country against using credit checks, people's credit histories in the hiring and other kind of employment contexts. So we got the city to, basically ban that practice, which was discriminatory and really perpetuated inequality in our financial system and kind of reflected back, right? When you think about people's credit reports and the unequal banking system that we're dealing with, and then to have, to have that kind of come back at you in the job context, being turned down or even fired. We had cases of people being fired from jobs because of that. So we used one of the things that we used in that to win that campaign was really effective communications. We built out a separate kind of microsite. And on that site, we posted these really powerful testimonials from New Yorkers that had experienced this. And these included, people who were domestic violence survivors whose spouses had, just crushed their credit, their credit histories. The financial abuse was part of it. And as a result, they were, turned down or fired from jobs. There were also New Yorkers who shared their stories of student debt, right? Very timely now. I think the whole understanding about student debt has really evolved since then. But at the time, there were, countless people that were just under the burden of student loans. Veterans and others were finding themselves, basically hit in the employment context and losing work. So I think that was a really powerful example where we got New Yorkers to share stories. Those same New Yorkers came out and testified at public hearings. They joined the coalition and were active participants in developing strategy. And they helped win that ban. And that site is actually still up. It's creditcatch22.org if anyone wants to check those out. So that's one example. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. I think that we can wrap up. So thank you for that question. Thank you again for joining us and for all of your support. We look forward to keeping in touch. Follow us on social media and look out for an email. We'll share links to resources, upcoming events, and other ways to get involved, including community actions that we and coalition members are organizing across the city. Stay tuned. Our next quarterly briefing will be in the new year, 2023. Thank you. Good night.